Mike, thinking realistically, what does this mean for young people living in red states? If a condom fails when you're having casual sex and there's a pregnancy, you're now... This is literally just control. You got it. You got it. If you choose to live in a red state at this point, that's the situation. And I know many of you are not choosing to live in a red state. I know many of you are forced there by your material circumstances, and I don't blame you. I live in a purple state with Republicans in charge of the Senate and the House. I've got a term-limited Democratic governor. My rights are under threat. AOC, go back a few minutes. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this time, I'm very proud to have a dear friend and colleague on the floor with me, and I am pleased to yield such time as she may consume to her, the Honorable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I now yield to the lady.
Thank you so much, Representative Green, for yielding your time. Now, I believe we're here today. Today is a very heavy day for so many of us across the country. Every single one of us has woken up today with less rights than we had yesterday. And pregnant people in particular are in more danger in the United States today than we were yesterday as a result of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade.
Could slavery be reversed with this logic?
I think
it's
what
a
we're
constitutional
experiencing
amendment.
here, it's important to tell the truth of what's
banning
going
slavery,
on.
So probably not. But
and with so many individuals out here,
who knows?
I think it's important for us to also tackle this myth that this is somehow about babies or children or life. Because the same individuals who claim to be protecting life, fight against universal health care. Do they believe in universal
is
child
a fucking
care?
worthless piece of shit from
Do they
Australia. Who
believe
gives a fuck what he
in
thinks?
life after birth?
Who gives a fuck what that dipshit thinks? He's a loser.
Hey, everyone.
Who gives a fuck?
From their policy positions, I assure
Who
you,
gives a fuck? The loser.
the evidence is lacking. A life that claims to be protecting the lives of children, or rather a party and individuals who claim to protect the lives of children just weeks after over a dozen children died in Texas, now claim to support their life, the lives of the young. Who are we protecting? Who does this protect? No one. Overturning Roe puts every single one of us in danger. And what I think many of our colleagues perhaps haven't quite, or perhaps they have fully understood, is that this also undermines
overturn
the
amendments
right
with
to
amendments.
privacy in the United States.
Most recent amendment is the one that controls.
But we are here to solve this issue.
I have to be honest.
Our job is to develop a path forward.
Thanks, buddy.
And in that, we know that this House has passed and is willing to codify Roe. But what we also need is answers from our colleagues in the United States Senate. So to those senators,
their court only has a 5-year term.
who
Yeah, I
voted
know. Yeah, I know.
for these justices under the claim and the guise that this would not happen, this decision falls on them. What will they do as they were lied to? What will they do as a consequence of this decision, whether that be Republican or Democrat? But we cannot allow this to go on unanswered. We are talking about a court with the majority of justices appointed by a party that has not won a popular presidential election more than once in 30 years, ruling against the majority of Americans. We have a Senate that is controlled by minority rule. And we have a House suffering from the impacts of gerrymandering that amplifies and undermines our democracy. We are in a very dangerous moment, not just for women, not just for LGBT communities, not just for all of us, but we are in a dangerous moment in the world because this is not just about the right to choice. This is about rule of law and democracy and who is a full person in the eyes of the law. But to all of those who are watching today's events unfold in fear, in anger, in rage, in depression, in anxiety, one thing remains steady, that we will not stop fighting until this is fixed. And I say that to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. We are not going away. We stay, we fight, we push, and we will not be silenced. With that, I yield back to the gentleman. Thank you very much.
I thank the gentlelady for messaging, and I assure her that I will be a part of that fight. There are some fights that you cannot escape. I believe that women should have the right to choose. It's not my choice.
Nice, Chaotic. Thanks for the 13 months, man.
I hope that we will see a time when the Supreme Court will realize that it has made a mistake that has to be corrected. But today I'm here primarily and principally to talk about a state of affairs in Texas.
Kavanaugh Thomas champion creating a better future for next generation of rapists. Champagne Socialist, thanks for the tier 3 for 27 months. You're the best. This is bullshit. The legislature has empty words when they look so impotent in the eyes of their populace because they are impotent. They are impotent. They went out and sung God Bless America. I mean, pathetic. God damn America. This is my opinion.
No, not God bless America, God damn America. That's in the Bible. Prior to Abraham Lincoln, the government in this country said it was legal to hold Africans in slavery in perpetuity. Perpetuity is one of the University of Chicago words. That means forever. From now on. When Lincoln got in office, the government changed. Prior to the passing of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution, the government defined Africans as slaves, as property, people with no rights to be respected by any whites anywhere. The Supreme Court of the government, same court, granddaddy court of the one that stole the 2000 election, Supreme Court said in its Dred Scott decision in the 1850s, no African anywhere in this country has any rights that any white person has to respect at any place, anytime. That was the government's official position, backed up by the Supreme Court, that's the judiciary, backed up by the executive branch, that's the president, backed up by the legislative branch, and
Chaotic, thanks for the 20 gifties. Wow.
The government. But I
Jesus, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the support.
That government's changed.
We also need to find abortion providers and abortion funds to support. I think I have a link somewhere in the Discord to do that.
Harry Truman's government, the military in this country was segregated, but governments changed prior to the civil rights and equal accommodations laws of the government in this country. There was back segregation
we have
by
that in
the country, legal discrimination by the government, prohibited blacks from...
I say motherfucker America, motherfucker America's mother, motherfucker America's daddy, America can eat a dick, America can lick the balls.
In 1982, Joe Biden proposes a constitutional amendment that would overturn Roe v. Wade and allow states to choose their own policies on abortion. You got exactly what you wanted. We did it, Joe! We did it! Uncomfortable laughter.
Well, if I were to put on my imaginary conservative hat for the conservative bloc of the Supreme Court, I think they might respond to those poll numbers with, well, then, great. If the majority of Americans support abortion, then it should be no problem. They go to the polls, and this issue has now been returned to the states. In fact, it's the conservative bloc of the Supreme Court that has long said the problem with recognizing rights, it feels good to say, hey, you have a constitutional right. But at its core, it's 9 humans who are appointed, not elected, who are making these decisions and taking away those same decisions from the people, from the states. And one of the things Alito pointed out is that Mississippi's constituency is majority female. So this is arguably
he's putting his conservative hat on, chat. Just for a moment, chat.
Decision in the legislature that was supported by a majority female constituency. So the thing about poll numbers and the thing about picketing out in front of the Supreme Court is that civics lessons teach you the Supreme Court is the last institution. It's designed to not care about pickets, polls, or anything else. We appoint our justices for life. They sit on as long as they can on good behavior unless they get impeached. And so for that reason, we did that for a very specific reason, because our framers hated royalty. But they did this so that the justices would not care about outside pressures. And now, do they anyway? Who knows? There's a lot of talk about Ginny Thomas and Clarence Thomas and maybe a realm of influence there, but that remains to be seen. But the bottom line is, if the poll numbers are what they are, then I think the conservative side of the Supreme Court would say, fantastic. If that's the case, then they should go to the actual polls, and this wouldn't be a problem. Now, the reality is you have population clusters in different states, and a state like Mississippi, maybe that's not possible. But, you know, under principles of federalism, this should create a situation where states that are doing something that is not desirable to the majority of people in this country, well, you vote with your wallet, you leave, you move to a state that does.
Okay, and so one of the things that's really funny about this is it's absolutely brain dead because A, the conservatives are one, going to try to go for a national abortion ban. Two, the elections are rigged. Three, states have outsized power and they're not drawn by any coherent definition of the word coherent. All right, states just exist. They were random lines put on a map when it was politically convenient for the political parties 150 years ago or 100 years ago or 50 years ago. Okay, excuse me, 75 years ago. That's when states were admitted. All right, North Dakota. Why do we have a North Dakota and a South Dakota? It was just the Dakota Territory. The Republican Party divided North Dakota Territory into two separate states so they could get more senators. That's it. California has 2 senators with 55 million people. Wyoming has 500,000 people and has 2 senators. You can't vote. Most votes in this country are wasted.
TMI.twitch.tv.
What does that mean? That means that they don't have actual fucking influence on the electoral outcome. Meaning the electoral outcome was so weighted to one side or the other that your vote literally doesn't matter. If you go to California to vote for a Republican for president, your vote is wasted. It doesn't matter. It doesn't count. And that's the reality for most Americans. We have an anti-democratic system. And for example, the Supreme Court just legalized gerrymandering, which was to allow politicians to discriminate against people on the basis of their political party to draw safe districts so that the minority would win. You can't say return back to democracy when you have a rigged, non-functional democracy.
Does what you like with your tax dollars in theory. The reality is not everybody has the money to get a covered wagon or a U-Haul and move to a state where abortion is legal.
One of my favorite content creators on YouTube, Inneuendo Studios, just replied, President Biden, I call on everyone, no matter how deeply they care about this issue, to keep all protests peaceful. Here's what I'll tell you, chat. When someone tells you what not to do, you should probably do it. Oh, doing Obergefell will bring to fruition all those innocent lives that would have been born had their parents been allowed to marry same-sex partners. We've been giving you peaceful protests for 20 years, and we've been arrested, kettled, gassed, shot, clubbed, held without charge, and had our right to assemble revoked. You can't preach nonviolence while you hold the truncheon in your hand. We peacefully protested the Iraq war and the Dems stayed in it. We peacefully protested the bankers who crashed the economy and the Dems gave them government jobs. We peacefully marched for women's rights and they let Roe get overturned. You can tell us to speak peacefully, but don't pretend you're gonna listen. So how do we do this? What's the next step? I'm in Kentucky. Are we allowed to tell me to do anything that we can actually affect change? I mean, you can protest. I'm sure there's going to be protests in your local communities, and go to them. Go to my Discord. There's a tab called Protest Safety that'll give you some tips, but, you know, ultimately, you're going to be met with violence by the police. And so, you know, protect yourself, wear masks.
It is worth reporting that there's a great deal of fear as well in that community. And certainly when I spoke to Representative Cori Bush, she spoke to that. She spoke to the fear that is amongst women. Because here in a state like Missouri, which is a very conservative state, has a conservative state government here, there's a concern amongst groups like Planned Parenthood that birth control could be next. Birth control is still legal in the state of Missouri.
Why are we talking about the next right? Why are we talking about the next right to be stripped? Why can't we keep our eye on the ball about the right that's currently being stripped? Why is half this conversation about the next right? What, are we suddenly going to get mad when they take away contraceptives? Are you suddenly going to say we should do something differently if they take away gay rights? Well, what if they take away interracial marriage? I mean, what point are you going to say the system doesn't work? Serious question. At what point are the institutionalists going to say the institutions don't work? At what point are you going to say we need to throw the Constitution out? Or we need to get rid of the filibuster? Or pack the Supreme Court? And get rid of the Senate? At what point are you going to say this system is fundamentally broken? Is there any point? Is there anything you're going to say ever that's going to make you go, maybe we should do something differently than what we're doing now? Is there anything? You tell me. You tell me. What would it take? What if they started rounding up trans people and shooting them in the head? Is that enough? You didn't care when they rounded up those babies and ripped those babies out of the arms of their mothers who were coming here as refugees and putting them into camps and having them sleep on concrete in the Texas sun with no shade. That didn't make you do anything. Abortion rights being taken away doesn't make you do anything. What's it going to do? What's it going to take? 1 million Americans dying of COVID didn't do it. What is it? What's going to make you think that maybe this system sucks? Nothing?
I want to bring in NBC News reporter Julie Sirkin now for more on this landmark Supreme Court ruling on abortion rights. She is at the Capitol for us as well today. Julie, I know you recently spoke to a mother and daughter who both have had abortions decades apart, one before Roe, the other during Roe. What did they tell you about their experiences?
Yeah, Aaron, Sammy Detzer and her mother, Patty, had abortions 47 years apart. And I spoke to Sammy, who had the unique experience of being able to openly speak with her mother about their abortion experiences. Take a listen.
I was 19 or 20 when I had an abortion.
And I was 25 when I had an abortion.
Patty Detzer had an abortion 5 years before the Supreme Court's landmark ruling, legally protecting a woman's right to choose.
They told me to get an abortion, I had to have a legal abortion, I had to see 3 shrinks. I do remember by the time I was finished with that, I felt like I really am crazy.
Her daughter, Sammy, found out she was pregnant in 2015. A year later, the two of them interviewed each other on a local radio show.
So I went and I bought a pregnancy test before work one morning, and this one came out positive.
The two women's experiences could not have been any more different, 47 years apart.
It took them a really long time, so by the time they got to me, I was 5 months pregnant.
I called my best friend, and after I hung up the phone with her, I called Planned Parenthood and immediately made an appointment for an abortion.
How fast was that whole process for you? Like 5 minutes. It was so fast.
Patty was dealing with substance abuse. It was her first time away from home. She could barely take care of herself. She wondered, how could she raise a child?
She would have had to make a lot of sacrifices. At that point, she hadn't finished school.
After the abortion, Patty got her life on track, receiving a master's degree in ceramics, becoming an artist, and going on to have 3 beautiful children.
It took her 5 months, and it took me 5 minutes. And both of us knew from the moment we found out we were pregnant that what we needed, what we wanted to do, and I was just born in a much luckier time.
Having access to a safe and effective abortion process didn't make it emotionally easier for Sammy.
We've created this shroud of shame, this perception that it is unacceptable.
This is something I want to say to people. Getting an abortion is no different than getting your tonsils taken out or getting a root canal. I think a root canal is probably a more honestly, like a tonsil serves a purpose within your body. A root canal makes more sense because you have unwanted cells causing you hardship in your body. That's about the moral equivalence of getting an abortion, is getting a root canal. And a root canal is probably more invasive, quite frankly, in most circumstances. So, I gotta be honest. I find it kind of weird when people are like, wow, you had to get an abortion? That's such a difficult... Oh, that's so difficult for you. Like, no, not really. Not really.
Patty's openness with her daughter about her own abortion helped Sammy feel confident about her decision. She quickly started sharing her abortion story with others.
I didn't believe that 1 in 3, 1 in 4 people has an abortion. That seemed like a way too high to me because I felt like my mom was the only person I knew.
Right.
Her mom is the only person she knew. Wow. Ridiculous.
But at first, Sammy thought about keeping it a secret.
I just didn't feel ready to tell you. I remember I had a thought in my mind, like, maybe I'll just never tell her. Maybe I'll never tell anyone.
I never told my parents. They were already having a hard enough time with me.
Patty tragically passed away in 2018.
What do you think your mom would say if she was here today and Roe was being overturned, she would be so angry. She would be so frustrated and so defeated. I know for a fact that she too would have, as I did, think about my 2-year-old niece and how devastating it is that she is growing up in a world where rights are actively being taken away from people.
And Aaron, this concept that women who fought for Roe to be put in place in the first place are now or had more rights than women are now going to have is one that rings true on Capitol Hill. Speaker Pelosi earlier today said, as a woman, as a mother, as a grandmother, to see young girls now have fewer rights than their moms or even their grandmothers is something very sad for our country.
Meanwhile, the Democrats are really trying to push hard, particularly the Democrats in the media. So you've got ABC's Terry Moran saying that you never know what they might do next. What are they going to do next? My God, the Supreme Court, they might actually go back and overrule Loving versus Virginia and allow states to ban interracial marriage. Oh, really?
Why not? Why not? Why wouldn't you? If you say substantive due process rights are not, and there's no right to privacy, why not ban interracial marriage? Why not allow states to ban interracial marriage? It's the same logic as overturning Roe. Traditionally, states have been in charge of family law. That includes marriage regulation. The Supreme Court rarely has ever spoken up. Loving and Obergefell are the exceptions. Legalizing same-sex marriage and legalizing racial marriage, interracial marriage. They could totally do that. What do you mean? The fuck are you talking about? Now, they probably wouldn't because it would be unpopular to make such a decision. And they know that their legitimacy rests on their popularity. They know that all these institutions of government only exist if we all bear the same common delusion that they're justifiable. That's what the founding fathers said. You want to go read the founding fathers? They would tell you revolution is a good idea. If the government is not responding to the will and needs of the people, they have the right to throw it out. That's the lesson of the American Revolution. The American Constitution is a fucking relic, and it ought to go in a dumpster. No other developed country has a constitution this convoluted and stupid. It's probably the worst constitution or worst organizing document of the fucking entire developed world. It's dog shit. Chile is probably the only one that has one this bad. And guess what? They just threw it out and they're writing a new one. Absolute dog shit.
It wasn't even based on the right to privacy, you idiots. That's based on the Equal Protection Clause. Wrong constitutional clause, you morons. And then they try to claim, well, they might overturn Obergefell. First of all, Obergefell is a bad Supreme Court decision. And if we had a Supreme Court with itself, they would overturn Obergefell.
Oh, wait a minute. So he's saying they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it, but they should. This is the conservatives' fucking brain. Oh, you're lying about me. You're saying I have intents to do something. I ought to have that intent, but I don't have that intent. But you're lying when you say I do. What? These fucking disgusting, vile pieces of shit. Most Dems are focused on conservative accomplishments of the past rather than progressing society. If only we had a name for that kind of behavior. It's called conservative. But yes, you're right.
Which would lead to, one.
I gotta be honest with you, chat. I'm sorry. I wanted to watch other shit and talk about other shit. But then right when I was preparing for the stream, the decision came down. And I've been yelling and ranting about this stuff before I was even on Twitch. I ran for office in 2014 as a Democrat, and I got a moderate amount of mainstream Democratic Party support. So I've seen it from the side of a machine lib, and one of the things I noticed, and it stuck in my craw right away, is that they weren't trying to win. They weren't trying to take affirmative steps. I remember sitting and talking to labor leaders in my community and going, we need to stop being on the back foot. And they were like, Mike, you're one of the few Democrats that has ever talked like this. We know that you're going to be there with us on the picket line, that you're going to try to expand labor rights instead of just trying to fend off right-wing attempts to repeal labor. And on every fucking issue, that's all they do. They're worthless. And the more I learned, the more experience I had with Democratic politics is when I realized that they are actually the impediment to change. Not even Republicans. Democrats are. Because sometimes Democrats win and sometimes Republicans win. Democrats have won multiple times in my lifetime, and yet they've never done anything. Their voters are behind you. Their voters want a $15 minimum wage. Their voters want free college. Their voters want Medicare for all. Their voters want to end the wars. Their voters want to have a more humane criminal justice system. Their voters want to legalize marijuana. The voters want good policies, climate change policy. All the Democratic Party voters want that. Yet when the Democratic Party gets control, they never do what the Democratic Party voters want. Never. That's why they're the fucking impediment. Republican voters get their 20% support policies passed all the time. Tax cuts for the rich, you got it. All the crazy gun regulations repealed, all sensible gun regulations repealed, you got it. More wars, you got it. Cut regulations on the environment, you got it. Crack down on queer folks and trans kids, you got it. Every fringe opinion conservatives hold, they get a response from their politicians. Democrats do jack fucking shit. Jack fucking shit. And it doesn't matter how many senators they have. Republicans are in the minority and it seems like they're in control. But when they have a thin majority, they do whatever the fuck they want. People still think the Democratic Party cares about winning elections. That's not its job, children. That's not why the Democratic Party exists. The Democratic Party exists to kill leftward progress in the world's most powerful nation. That's all it cares about doing. The Democratic Party doesn't care about winning elections. The Democratic Party doesn't care about promoting popular policies. The Democratic Party doesn't care about passing legislation. The Democratic Party only cares about doing things like this. Democratic Party leadership will be 100% be fine with all of those things. And that's reality. Unfortunately, that is the truth. Doesn't mean that every Democratic politician is like that, but that is what the Democratic Party is like. The Democratic Party is like this. The Democratic Party is a loser party, and the people that are given money are the ones that lose, because that's what the corporations want. They want a disempowered left, so they fund the weakest loser Dems, and that's not a hypothetical. It's happening right now. Liberals have been treating politics like chess, while the right treats politics like war. This is a result. I mean, chess is a war game, and chess is a war game, which they don't treat politics like chess. They treat politics like checkers. No, they treat politics like, that's not even right, because there's competition in those games. They treat politics like, what's a game where it's a cooperative game, where like everybody's on the same team? That's how libs treat politics. Candyland has a winner. It would be like they treat it like the Republicans are on the same side as them, that they're trying to help the country. It's baby brain shit. Dems treat political institutions like they treat running a shitty NGO that gets nothing done but provides high salary jobs. Exactly. Sinecure jobs. AOC has just provided what I've wanted for a while, chat, which is now is the time to organize. New York is a legal abortion state, but people will need help getting here. We have compiled a direct multi-abortion fund link to help people seek the medical care they need. 100% goes to them and covers regions across the U.S. So I'm going to go ahead and retweet this, and my mods are going to put it into the Discord. But if you are feeling like you want to give money to these groups, I'm going to be giving money as well. Damn, AOC is an actual good politician and a decent human. She is raising funds to help people. Anyway, moving on. Dems play politics like Jenga. They work with the other side to pull down the systems, not try to be the last one to get the blame for its collapse.
DSA nodders.
Never heard any plausible strategy talk about until I started watching you. It's incredible how much they convince you it's impossible. Yeah, they're pathetic losers.
I feel like fortunate to be in California in many respects, but I feel worried about people who aren't in California and may not have the same benefit of, their state's rights. So just concerned about the direction of the country and the courts, because I always looked up to the Supreme Court and thought that they were objective.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Married gay people in red states. Start getting all of your paperwork together now. Children's birth certificates, title to any property you jointly own, insurance policies, and so forth. See an estate planning attorney in order to make your relationship unassailable via contract. Obergefell will almost certainly fall within a year. Protect yourself via contract right now. Also, it's horrifying to contemplate, but I think interracial married couples living in the Deep South should make sure their documents are in order too. SCOTUS is moving us into some deeply troubling waters. I mean, I don't think they're going to do loving just because it would be too shocking. It would make America an international pariah. They probably can't do that. Just from the foreign policy perspective, they can't do it, but
Respondent Ali Vitale is joining us from her post there. Obviously, Ali juggling a lot of different topics on the Hill this week and today in particular. But let's stay on this issue of the Supreme Court decision. What are we hearing from Democrats in particular on the Hill today?
rage. This is a moment that all of them knew was coming because of that leaked draft opinion. Nevertheless, the rage that I'm seeing in my text messages, in my in-person exchanges with House members who have been walking by, is still so palpable. Chuck Schumer, many of them out of town. Chuck Schumer, the majority leader in Manhattan today, talking about it. Listen to him.
Today is one of the darkest days our country has ever seen. Millions upon millions upon millions of American women are having their rights ripped away from them by 5 unelected justices on the extremist MAGA Supreme Court. These justices, appointed by Republicans, presiding without any accountability, have stolen a fundamental right.
There are so many layers to what Schumer was saying there, both in terms of how these justices were confirmed. We know that many of them are from the Trump years when he was able to appoint multiple justices to the Supreme Court through multiple fraught hearing processes for each of them. Schumer referencing that. And then, of course, Democrats here on the Hill also just pushing ahead to November, because as I've been covering this issue both over the course of the last few weeks and, frankly, for the last few years, this is a moment that Democrats and reproductive rights activists have been coming for a very long time. They knew that the states were legislating around this in a way that they hoped to get it to the Supreme Court just to tee up a moment like this. And nevertheless, they squandered their opportunity to actually codify the protections that were offered by Roe versus Wade
Thank you.
back
A
in
reporter
May,
saying
when
this.
51 lawmakers in the Senate, including one Democrat, Joe Manchin, voted against the Women's Health Protection Act. And since then, lawmakers here are angry, but they're frankly hamstrung in terms of what they can do.
What about on the other side of this? Obviously, this is something that Republicans have been pushing for on the Hill, and obviously they knew the decision was coming, so expecting this. What's been the response, the reaction today from Republican lawmakers?
Look, by and large, it has been positive in that many Republicans feel affirmed in their anti-abortion values being seen by the Supreme Court today.
And by the way, this is how it operates in America. The right is always affirmed, no matter how radical they are. It's fine. They're affirmed. They're secure. They're smiling. Democrats will tell you to calm down. They tell the right to go further.
But it's not necessarily uniform. Senator Susan Collins of Maine, for example, releasing a statement today, and I'll read from you in part. She says the Supreme Court has abandoned a 50-year precedent at a time that the country is desperate for stability. This ill-considered action will further divide the country at a moment when, more than ever in modern times, we need the court to show both consistency and restraint. It makes sense when you hear this coming from Collins. This is a precedent that she repeatedly talked about during Supreme Court nominating contests, but at the same time, it's one that she said, for example, during the Justice Kavanaugh confirmation hearings in 2018, that she believed him when he said privately to her that he would continue to uphold the super precedent of Roe and the other precedent of Casey, which is also baked into this decision. Now we're hearing from others like Joe Manchin, who also voted to confirm some of those justices who have now voted to overturn Roe, where they're saying that they are disappointed and that they were misled by some of these judges. And it sort of speaks to the entire theater that is the Supreme Court nominating process. There was a discussion about this after the Ketanji Brown Jackson confirmation hearings, how or if this process should change, because really the unspoken thing about it is that every judge who lands there, especially on the conservative side, the people nominating them know where they stand on this issue, but when they go before the Senate for confirmations, they can't explicitly talk about it. They find ways to go around it. And it lands us in moments like this one where senators confirm them, believing that they'll uphold these precedents, and then you end up here.
All right, Ali Vitale for us on Capitol Hill today, covering both of these important topics. Ali, thank you. I do want to turn back to legal analyst Danny Savalos now and NBC News reporter Chloe Atkins, who've been with us sort of picking apart the decision today and some of the ramifications of it. Chloe, I'll start with you. What sort of reaction are you hearing? You've been covering this topic for several years now. What are you hearing from your sources and people that you've spoken to over time?
Yeah, I've spoken to people across the country this week and also this morning, and it's safe to say that emotions are running very high. Planned Parenthood President Alexis McGill Johnson released a statement this morning right after we heard about this.
Did she call for ripping the Supreme Court down and ripping out its fucking knocking those columns down? ripping down the justice for all bullshit. Are you watching the stream unsubbed? You're making income inequality worse. You are doing anti-praxis. We are the only Twitch stream that will not accept scam advertisers, and I will never fuck you over by selling you crap